Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about the one thing America does really well. And we're going to talk about what happens when America sneezes. We're going to do this because there's a whole bunch of messages talking about things happening in other countries. And it's Americans talking about the internal politics in other countries. I mean, that's rare to begin with. I mean, to get one or two is one thing, but to get a whole bunch of them, that's something else. Because generally speaking, Americans aren't super concerned about the internal politics of other countries. They all have the same concern, though. It's a rise of right wing populist figures. That saying, when America sneezes, Canada gets a cold, or when America sneezes, Europe gets a cold. It goes to the one thing the U.S. actually does well. Interestingly enough, that saying originated during the Napoleonic era, and it was when Paris sneezes, Europe gets a cold. The U.S., what do we export? Yeah, a whole lot of people drawing a blank right now, huh? Yeah. We export culture. It's the one thing that we export. It's the one thing we do well. We export culture. And that's kind of what that saying really means. I mean, it can apply to a whole bunch of other things, from the economy to, well, everything. But when there are cultural shifts in the United States, you see them occur in other places later. And this is everything from music to fashion. It occurs. It also occurs with politics. After Trump's win, you actually saw a bunch of right wing nationalists win in other countries. It happened then too. This is just carrying that on because the U.S. was incapable of stopping itself from falling for it. The rhetoric, the imagery, the ideas, they spread. We sneezed. And it spread. So you're seeing in other places now. Now, keep in mind, it's not all the U.S. This is like one thing where you can say the U.S. is exceptional, but understand it's not all the U.S. Some of this would have occurred anyway. It always does. But by and large, a whole lot of this is a direct result of the American voter allowing themselves to be tricked. If you look at what people are calling these candidates, they're calling them the Trump of country X. I mean, even in the way they're described, it's a callback to the U.S. It's concerning for Americans because for a lot of Americans, we feel like that's past. We got past Trump. We haven't yet, just to be clear. And Trumpism is still alive and well. It's fading, and it could go away. It needs a decisive defeat at the polls, but we'll see how that works out. The concern is that because it's happening in other places, well, it might come here. It was already here. It was already here. We sneezed, and now it's everywhere. The thing that Americans need to do is to make sure that we don't sneeze again. That's the important part. Far right, the far right ideology, it's bad. It's bad. It never really does well for the people who support it, except for those people at the very, very top. So the U.S. has to make sure that at bare minimum, we cover our mouth and nose when we sneeze. We have to limit it. The rhetoric, it's starting to fade. The influence of a lot of those people in the U.S. is starting to fade, but it could easily come back. If you're concerned about it, if you're looking at other countries and you're seeing figures and you're like, that's Trump, just a European version, you have to acknowledge that the fear isn't it's going to spread here. The fear is it's going to come back here. And if it does, it'll be exported. It's a cycle. If it is a concern, because in the American mindset, we can recognize that kind of stuff in other countries, but it can't happen here, right? It originated here. It originated here this time. That's what Americans really need to focus on, is to making sure that they don't get back in office. The people who espouse that far right ideology, that ideology that consists of othering, that ideology that consists of power for them and you need to do what you're told, all wrapped up in the cloak of freedom. We saw recently with the personal freedom thing, those rankings. The states that talk about it, they don't have it. If your area is free, you don't have to proclaim it. You don't have to advertise it. It's just known. We have to make sure we don't fall for it again as a country. That's what you can do. If you're concerned about it, you see it happening overseas, it's easier to recognize. We have to make sure that we don't fall for it again. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.